All right. Is the microphone? Yes. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I know you guys are still munching like brownies and stuff. So hope you guys have been enjoying this conference. All right. Still settling in? Yum. All right. So my name is Tomomi Imura. And I think I'm better known as a girly Mac on the social media. It's my old handle name I've been using for years and years. I used to be a huge Mac fangirl. So I still do like Macs though. So here I'm going to talk about Shadow DOM. So this is a part of a web components talk. And I don't think you guys have, actually we haven't got any web components talk today, but maybe you guys have some chance to catch up tomorrow. There are going to be some Polymer talks tomorrow too. So my talk is not going to be like really a super advanced topic, so it's fine if you don't know what exactly web components are. I'm going to briefly explain anyways. So let's say you're working with somebody, and creating some sort of web UI, and you're taking over somebody's project, or maybe you're co-working with somebody, with your coworker, or maybe like doing some project together. And let's say you're creating this web UI, and you're handed the markup looks just like this, and you're supposed to maintain this, or you're supposed to add feature or style. I think you've all experienced this before. You have to just go digging in all those divs, nested divs, more divs, and oh my gosh. And I do not want to click here. It's going to be more divs inside for sure, right? It's ugly. it's really, so it's not just the looking ugly. I mean, this is really not maintainable, So it's just really a torture for us, the web devs. So of course, these days no one, well, let's say, you're more semantic, so you try, you're not keen, let's say you're keen to HTML5 and try to be more semantic using sections and header and more meaningful elements, but still it's ugly and it's really hard to deal with. So these days, we work on more modular UIs. We componentize each component here. So let's say on this example, you have some sort of container. Well, let's say I call it scaffold actually. And you have a scaffold. That's one thing, one modular scaffold UI. And you might have some left menu here, left column menu with some sort of list. And that's one thing. So then you might have a main pane with actual content and some input and button, but they're more like stylized input, stylized submit, or like just the buttons here. So then the modular UI kind of looks like this. Well, actually, if you use Polymer, you've noticed that the core scaffold and all those core dash elements are from Polymer. Actually, Polymer 0.5. So they just announced the 1.0, so I really have to update my code actually. It's going to be a kind of pain because those core dash elements are all deprecated, so anyways, but it still looks pretty cleaner. It's easier to maintain, and you can understand what's going on. So let's say in the middle there's a repeated content here, something called XChat list. Well, that I'm going to talk about a little later. So it's easier to maintain, easier to understand. You can just give your code markup to somebody else. Everybody should understand somehow. So W3C web component. So there are four, actually, web components has 4 technologies, or more like defined by W3C, and it has 4 technologies here. HTML imports, HTML templates, custom elements, and then Shadow DOM. So today I'm going to focus on the 4th one, the Shadow DOM here. So what it does, Shadow DOM, what it does to markup, I've been keeping talking about. So that enables markups to be composed in modular pattern that I just talked about, and can be encapsulated, so can create a private element, private like UI module. You can encapsulate your code in JavaScript, so why not for markup too, right? So you can do that actually. And overlay the subtree of nodes. So that I'm going to talk about it soon. So the browser support, it's actually not that great to be honest. You don't see Firefox here, Safari, or IE. And then currently, it's only supported by browsers who has Blink rendering engines. Actually, you know what? I was just seeing Doris talk. I'm kind of wondering about Edge browsers. I don't know. I should really look into it. But anyways, yes, currently the support is not that great. So we kind of sort of need to rely on polyfills, which Polymer is for. But I'm not going to talk about Polymer much here, though. So you say, yeah, so I don't know the Shadow DOM. I haven't seen it yet. What is this really? But you actually have seen it already because they are already in user agent. Well, when I say user agent, it's actually a browser. So this presentation here, my slide deck is actually running on browser. This is everything's written in HTML. So this here, it's actually an audio element here. So when you have a controls attribute here, it gives you a nice UI, right? So it's really does. I don't know if you can hear. Oh, hold on a second, maybe no. Oh, it's not important, but. Every time I try this at home, my cat freaked out. So it's actually an audio element here. So, let's say the calendar, actually. So this is an input and type date, the input. When you have an input text, you get a text box, right? So when you have a type date, you get a nice calendar, right? So you used to use a JavaScript UI library or something to achieve this UI, but now it comes with browser. And again, this is in the user agent. So each user agent has a different look and feel. So this is Chrome, but when you're using Safari or something else, it might look slightly different. So when you look at this audio element on your browser, in DevTools, this is what you get, right? So just the audio element itself. And you don't see anything inside, but you can turn it on. So press here and turn it on. In this setting, there's something called Show User Agent Shadow DOM. So you can actually visibly see this encapsulated part when you're developing. So this is how it looks like once it's enabled. So you'll see on the shadow, the audio element, it's actually, now it's a shadow host. That host in all the Shadow DOM actually has a shadow root, and then it has all the Shadow DOMs. And that's like another Shadow DOM inside as well. You can nest it. So I think they are more like it's a UI component for those buttons or something. So, so when you're creating custom elements, so this is a custom element. Yeah, another cat here. It's a chat box. So actually, this UI is from this Kitty Anonymous chat room I actually have written. It's real. Because, it's actually really working. I don't know. This is a live chat, so I don't know what's in it. I don't want to see something totally inappropriate here. I don't know what people say. Or it's not bad. Yeah. So each one of those chat conversation here is a custom element I have created. By the way, this is actually built in Polymer too. So each component, or I would say custom element here, I named it X chat list. This naming convention, X dash, it's really probably not really the best way. Maybe shouldn't be using X, but you shouldn't be just using one word because it's kind of confusing with native element, or more like, the one comes with browser, so you should use dash naming convention. Maybe not X, but something. So this is how it look like. So when you look at this XChat list in a dev tool, just like audio element I showed to you, you see this element is now called the shadow host, and you see the shadow root and all those shadow DOM, which is actually something I have predefined because I made it. And using this time element here, I don't know if you can see, it's not really good naming because this time element's not really coming from the actual time element because I think it's the real one's deprecated. It's actually created by GitHub. So I think they should name it GitHub-time or something. So I use this to display some relative times here. So instead of showing just the regular timestamp, it shows relative timing, like 3 minutes ago. So it's kind of neat. So I can use a custom element within a custom element to create anything you want, you know? So like again, the element, this XChat list element, or whatever the element you created, it's now called shadow host when you're talking about, you know, Shadow DOM here. So the root of Shadow DOM subtree is called shadow root. So that's where the private, you know, like encapsulated root of your shadow host. And now you have a Shadow DOM subtrees there, and you got children. And some children visible to end user, which is called light DOM. Basically, this light DOM is really a text node. So this is a diagram I created. It's kind of confusing, so I tried to make some easy to understand diagram to make whole sense out of it, but it's still kind of weird. So, you know, of course, here everybody knows about DOM tree, right? So it has document, right? And it has a root element, which is HTML. And under the root element, you got head and a body. And let's say under the body, you got H1, div, section, whatever. Let's say you have P, and it has a P element, say hello. So that's a text node. That's, well, really simplified way of saying this DOM node, right? And then you can have a custom element here too, just like any P or H1, anything. But when you have a custom element, like again, this is encapsulated, it's a private element, right? So now it has something called shadow root here. And this shadow boundary here is where it's protected from outside world. And inside of it has a shadow DOM, so it has a shadow root child. And it could be a text node. So it's really difficult to create a good diagram because, again, text node is really exposed to the end user, so not really super private. But anyways, it's a light DOM as well. But I know it's kind of confusing, but once I show this JavaScript code, I think you can understand better. So you know how to create node, DOM node here, right? So let's say get a div, and I give the ID name as a parent. Okay. So you want to create a child under this parent. So well, what do you do? It's document, create an element, and create div, and append child to the parent. Easy, right? So you know this. So that's DOM. So when you're talking about shadow DOM, it's slightly different. So you get a div, let's say div, but I don't call it parents this time. Let's say ID host, because this element here is now becoming a host element for the shadow DOM, right? So let's say bar host document create selector ID host, and now creating this bar shadow host, and the host that creates shadow root. So that creates a shadow root. So now you're making it whole private. Then after this, so this is not document dot, it's a host dot. And then you can append the child just like in regular DOM node now. So now bar child, create element, div, and you can just append it to this shadow root, not to the host and div. You have to append it to the shadow root. So that's what the difference, you know, from the DOM, the regular DOM. It's kind of weird to say regular DOM, but it's anyways. All right. Oh, okay. So you can, of course, style the shadow DOM as well. So that's a tricky. So there's something called CSS scoping. This is another web standard and defined by W3C, CSS level 4. So have host pseudo class, or host function pseudo class, and a host context pseudo class. And it has some pseudo elements, content, and a shadow pseudo element too. And there's some tricky things here. It's like greater than, it's like a triple. So that's called the shadow PSN descending combinator. So I'm going to quickly explain how or when you use those to style shadow DOM. So this is host pseudo class that selects a shadow host So again, I'm going to go back here. So again, I'm going to have shadow element and shadow host. It's also called shadow host. So you gotta get the naming to this terminology to be able to understand. So the shadow host, shadow root, right? Okay, go back to my CSS. So yes, so when you're defining your new your custom element here, let's say again XChat list, you want to just give the general style, right? So this is when you use this host pseudo class. So in this case, you give in like box list of, it's a list and it has a border bottom and a mean height like 72 pixels. That's basically what it is. Of course, you add more styles here. Try to, simplify this example, but that's when you use a host pseudo class. Again, you're using this when you're defining your custom element. And here's host function pseudo class. So that selects the shadow host that matches that selector argument here. So in this case, on the top, dot fancy, that's a class name here, right? For this element, actually shadow host. Or you can create a hover state. So that's when you use the host function pseudo class. And then there's another thing, pseudo class called host context. Now that matches a host element if the ancestor, in this case, the ancestor matches the selector argument. So what it does is when you are using the custom element, which has been predefined, you define, somebody define, doesn't matter when you're using, and you have some sort of div and appearance like in a wrapper, and they give it a class name, fancy pants. So you can use a host context and give it the class name here to style, sort of overriding this style. And content, it's a pseudo element. And content targets light DOM. Again, I mentioned about before, the light DOM is a text node part of the shadow DOM. So in this example, again, you're using this again when you're defining your element. You have here span. So it's actually inside of span is the light DOM here, text node. So this is how you style the content and visible content, the light DOM. And there's a more pseudo element, and it's a shadow. So that matches a shadow root. So in this case, okay, you're using this custom element, and there's a shadow root, right? It's not visible to anybody. I just wrote it down for the convention. So you got a shadow root. And when you have div inside, that's how you select div tag here. So XChat list, and using a shadow pseudo element and a div. But when you want to actually select everything inside of this shadow root, like go deep inside, you're using this shadow piercing descendant combinator. So that actually lets you style everything inside, like nth level, like as deep as you want. Actually, so this is sort of new. So everything I'm talking about here, especially for the CSS, it's really new. It's really, specification is not done yet. So it's not in a recommendation state. So to be honest, this specification here is changing pretty much daily. So when I was preparing for this slide, I made it this, so using audio. So this is a native, elements audio, right? The same one with the cat voice. So you can override this style by using this shadow piercing descendant combinator by just giving the input type range, which is this background of this this slider here. You should be able to, but this is actual HTML rendered on my latest Chrome, and this was a screenshot I took a while ago. It's no longer working. I was like, sure, what did I do? Then I remember Chrome was using something called deep, like /deep/. If you've ever used this, now it's replaced by this the shadow piercing descendant combinator. but so the div is deprecated. So if you never have heard of it, just forget it. You don't need it anymore. But then, okay, so it's replaced by this combinator. But then I stopped working again. So I'm like, oh shoot, what did I do? And I just well, basically Googled around and asking some people on Twitter and figures. Chrome team have deprecated this, and Shadow as well. So I'm like, oh gosh. So I honestly really don't know the plan or there's any alternative for this. Sorry, oh, damn it, I showed it already. So yeah, actually this was my last slide, but I didn't want to end my talk in really like uncertain ways. Like, oh, I don't know what it's gonna be like. So I just added a cat photo to make you happy. So it's a shadow dome and light dome. Right? So, okay. Thank you so much. And I am sticking around here, so if you have questions.